Hey there. Trying something new again on my YouTube channel here. Last time I did a video, except for the very first video, the first time that I did something without a visual backdrop and that it was just unscripted and freeform, but it was pre-recorded. Did the video on um, what's it called? Photo booth here on my MacBook. But this time I decided to try going live. Not that anybody in America anyway is going to be awake for this, but I'm sure it'll be saved and added as a video. And this is one more experiment. Once again, I had a little bit of difficulty for a while trying to maintain artistic connection, productivity, reading and writing, and not slipping back into the sort of darkness and the difficult mornings and not getting back to it. Springtime's helped a little bit, but still just amazingly difficult. Can't seem to get a beat on it. The loneliness is part of it, just waking up alone and this sort of entrenched toxic loneliness that's just so prevalent, particularly in America. The toxic legacy of rugged individualism, as I like to call it, one of America's founding principles. But been a pretty good day. My uncle invited me down to Positive Pie, the local pizza place in town, to watch the Game 7 of the Eastern Conference semifinals, where the Boston Celtics spanked the Milwaukee Bucks to get into the conference finals against the Miami Heat. And it was enjoyable. I felt surprisingly energetic, good conversation, even though basketball is not my favorite sport. There was another guy named John who happened to be there eating, and we all had a good conversation talking about the game and other stuff. And my uncle bought me a tasty black bean burger with side salad. Usually don't eat during the day because it usually seems to make me feel kind of heavy and not as likely to be creative, but it seemed like maybe it actually helped this time, which is rare. And I was able to keep it going and do some productive reading, finished Kurt Vonnegut's Breakfast of Champions, and verifying that the story that my Uncle Mac told me about my father telling him that the character Diana Moon Glampers was in it in the story Harrison Bergeron. And even though Mac never read it, he remembered for some reason my dad telling me about it. And Diana Moon Glampers, I recognized her name from Vonnegut's God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, which I've read three times, which is an amazing book. Read it twice, almost exactly a year ago, when I was in the hospital for a month. And different character. The novel was written in 1965, but it turns out she wasn't in Breakfast of Champions, so I researched it, and she was in the short story Harrison Bergeron was written in 1961, 4 years before God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, where she was the general, the lead person in charge of this science fiction future where all talented and beautiful people are suppressed in that regard so that nobody who's mediocre has to feel bad. And she's in charge of all the controls on beautiful and talented people. And her character in God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater is very different character, but she's tragic in this night, which was unusual. And I texted my uncle after researching that and gave him a link to read the short story. Very short story. I read it online, sent him the link, and then did a blog post on the topic of death, which has been on my mind. And it was the final idea in the final paragraph of Breakfast of Champions in a very interesting way. Reminds me of one of the more memorable scenes to me in Slaughterhouse-Five, where the main character is talking to maybe his mother. His mother's dying in the hospital, almost totally out of energy, and she's trying to say something. He leans close, and she takes like 5 minutes gathering all her strength to say just a couple of words. And what she's finally able to whisper to him is, "How did I get so old?" Very powerful. And spoiler alert to the end of Breakfast of Champions, where he tells Kilgore Trout, the famous science fiction novelist from his other novels, including God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, he tells him that he's going to set all his characters free to have free will and not be controlled by him anymore. And the response of Kilgore Trout, reminiscent of Orwell's famous line, "Freedom is slavery," is not to be excited by what Vonnegut, who makes himself a character in Breakfast of Champions, what Vonnegut tells Kilgore Trout is not to be excited, but just to insist, sort of frightened, in a frightened way, and repeatedly, "Please make me young. Please just make me young. Please just make me young." Yeah, and yeah, when I was young, of course, as I said in the blog post that I just wrote, that came fast and creatively, 2,000 words, a lot to say. Because of course, when I was young, even though I was a thoughtful, philosophical young person, I felt like because of that, and because I wasn't afraid of death, that was special, and that was obviously going to carry over. Wouldn't have a midlife crisis or whatever, which I was aware of. But realizing as I get older that more and more it does affect me. Sometimes in dreams or when I'm lying in bed. Just this morning, I all of a sudden the idea of Hulk Hogan, the famous wrestler, popped into my head, and I imagined him as he might be now, maybe 70 or so, being old, and all of a sudden I was just really frightened. Just famously, even though it's kind of fake, professional wrestling is just a virile man, and just getting older and dying, losing strength. And I've always been aware that my um, self-image has been kind of brittle. I haven't had enough of a diversity of interest, enough diversity of relationships to survive blows to various aspects, faltering in writing or the loss of a girlfriend. And so it's not surprising. I sort of knew in advance, in a way that kind of scared me, that as I got more towards middle age, without a career and a marriage and family and kids and lots of relationships and lots of interests, that I'd be vulnerable, because fitness and health from eating has always been very important to me. And I could sense that when that stuff started to falter, I could really struggle. And I have, in fact, felt myself struggling. I'm still in good shape, still fairly handsome, but it's harder to find the energy to exercise. And I still have my hair, seemingly, but there's more and more white hairs, particularly in my face. And, the midlife crisis stuff, about 45, pretty common. Um, Not having a career and more problems, just finding meaning in activities. Things seem more just like pounding sand into rat holes, whereas just pleasurable stuff when you're younger just feels meaningful in itself. But now, like, what's it for? What's the larger purpose? It's just going to go away when I die because I can't take it with me. And so I found myself thinking about Leo Tolstoy's novella, which I read in college, The Death of Ivan Ilyich. Only 100 pages, but about a middling legal functionary who all of a sudden gets some kind of mystery illness and dies quickly from it, and his struggle to acceptance. Um, Tolstoy often thought about death, even though it terrified him. Didn't ignore it at all, the way most people try to ignore death. Um, yeah, found myself thinking about Yeah, so anyway, I pulled it out. I'd meant to read it like 9 months ago when I first started doing the audiobooks here and the blog posts and the writing, but didn't actually start it. But read the first few paragraphs tonight after finishing Breakfast of Champions and before I did the blog post. The introduction to the novella, it's a 100-page novella, and the introduction is 35 pages, so it's more than 25% of the length of the book. Short paperback book. I'm on video here, I can actually show it. The Death of Ivan Ilyich. It's going to be backwards visually, I imagine. I don't know if this video will be reversed. But I guess I can show Breakfast of Champions too. I gotta go to the bookstore and get another book now. Not because I don't have any books to read, but because it's good to support local businesses. It's Breakfast of Champions, new edition. Yeah. So I'm realizing the topic. I'm realizing the videos I've done. The chapter by reading of Sand County Almanac by Ola Leopold is probably getting the most views of anything I've done. I even actually got a comment from a stranger about how appreciative he was of that. It's probably the first thing I should try to get back to with the visual aids, the visual background to make it more polished, and also with now the better sound. And yeah, so it should be even better. I'm gonna try to do a little bit of the novel too. Remember where I was in that when a couple weeks ago now. Did about 500 words, and it was a struggle to remember where I'd left off. Last time I'd written in it was mid-December. Been like 4 months. I think it was Annie Dillard and what was that book she wrote about her writing life? Can't remember the name of it, but something about it. If you're writing a book and the longer you stay away from it, it's like staying away from a sick friend. Gets more and more irritated and angry that you're not coming to visit him. I guess while I'm at it, another thing I mentioned in the blog post when I was thinking about death was the amazing artistic short video game Little Nightmares. Told more or less wordlessly, just with visuals, about a faceless child, sort of wearing a hood, a mask, for no apparent reason, wakes up in the bowels of this mysterious steamship. You can see the machinery and hear the sound of the ship and the rocking of it. And you're wandering through it, and there's dangers everywhere, and you can die at any moment. All kinds of frightening threats. And you slowly piece together the mystery of what's going on in the ship. And spoiler alert, you eventually realize that other children, in addition to other kinds of animals, are being harvested for food. There's a kitchen you go through, and these crazed cooks are cooking all kinds of grisly meat. And if they catch you, they'll cook you to throw you in an oven, hack you in two with a butcher knife. And when you finally get a view outside of the ship, you see all these fat, old, frightened, dead-eyed people filing onto the ship called the Maw. The ship is called the Maw from this other ship that's docked with it. And then a little later you run into this dining hall, for some reason like Japanese themed, and all of these fat, frightened, old, dead-eyed people are just devouring mountains of food, just desperately, like out of just like some kind of terror, like if they can eat enough then it'll save them somehow. Made me think of John Up Rabbit Run and the old basketball coach with a comment about how when you get older that you're always hungry, but whatever you eat, it's not the right thing. And all these people eating stuff, if they catch you in this dining hall, they'll eat you, but they're so busy with their food that the only time they even notice you or try to catch you is if you get within arm's reach of them, because they can't even get up from their chairs. And one of them, even that does, all he can do is crawl on the ground because he's just so just decrepit. And then at the end of the final chapter is you meet this sort of mysterious, magical woman who also seems to be sort of Japanese. She's wearing a mask and broken mirrors everywhere. She's never seen her reflection, seemingly. And the way you defeat her is finding the only mirror that's not broken and showing her her reflection. Very symbolic, because she seems to be the one in charge of this ship, this maw, where these terrifying old people are, devouring youth to try to get youth back. And you show her the reflection, which she's ignored, the truth, what she's doing in order to, I don't know, make money, get power, the way politicians always do, ignore morality in order to get money and power, and try to get a sense of youth. Because money and power can make you feel young. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And you're this innocent child, you start the game, but just a 3-hour game, at the end of it, you suffer bouts of hunger and you slowly get more sort of wild about it. At first, it's just like a sandwich, and then you eat a rat, and then you eat one of these gnomes that it turns out some children are turned into by this mysterious Japanese woman. This gnome offers you a piece of food, and for some reason you turn it down and you eat the gnome. And then at the end, after you defeat this mysterious woman who's in charge of the maw with the mirror, she like passes out, she faints or goes unconscious, and you bite into her neck like some kind of child vampire, kill her, take her power somehow, and you use the power to escape the ship, and you just end up coming out of this doorway, this little very top of the maw in the middle of the ocean, and it's just this little island, this little tiny peak with a door, and there's ocean everywhere. There's no way to escape, and that's the end of the game. I bought Little Nightmares 2 the other day. It was on sale. Interesting story. I'm assuming it's related. Starts in a woods with this hunter, and you cross this small sea, and you end up in this city, scary city with televisions everywhere, broken televisions everywhere. I'm curious to see where it goes, but I'm only like half an hour into it. Anyway, death. Yeah. If you're not so young, you're filled with Peter Pan. The topic of death probably interests you too, or at least it's important, even if it doesn't interest you. Well, I guess I'll end this stream. Hopefully the audio is working. I know when I did it before, it worked fine. It's a plug and play. The USB's plugged in. But, if you watch this, hope you enjoyed it. Comments, like and subscribe, like they say. That's how you get the algorithm to notice you, how other people get to see your stream. If you just watch and don't do anything else, you're not helping anybody else see what I'm trying to present. Anyway, what is it? Willem Lang on Vermont Public Radio always said, I gotta get back to work.